Hey everybody, welcome back to the homestead. Well, today we're finally able to get back to work on the greenhouse after a string of really kind of nasty, rainy, wet weather over the last couple weeks. We've really just had to leave it on hold and leave it right where we left off the last time you guys saw us working on it.
Today is actually really not a very nice day, but it's an important day for us. Today we have to get the rest of the raised bed garden filled. Yesterday we took a trip into Springfield and got another big load of compost so that this morning we were ready to get started working.
Right. Now, the reason we need to get that filled today is because the next 2 days are supposed to be absolutely gorgeous. Highs in the mid-60s, which is the perfect type of weather to finally get the plastic put on the greenhouse. But we can't put the plastic on if the raised bed isn't filled, so we absolutely have to get the raised bed filled today. We're not going to worry so much about the big pots, but we need to get that raised bed filled today. And a couple other things that we're going to bring you along for as well. Well, that's about all we're going to be able to do with the tractor today. The ground is just so saturated from all of the precipitation that we've had recently. We've had snow, we've had downpours of rain, we've had freezing rain. The ground is just so wet and soft. We're basically tearing up our entire place by driving the tractor around these days, which in some areas is okay, and I'll fix it later on. But if you look down on our woven ground cover that we put in the greenhouse, I'm having to drive partially into the greenhouse with the tractor to dump the compost, and I'm making these big ruts in the greenhouse, and I'm not really going to be able to fix these very easily because this is already covered up with the woven ground cover. So I'm going to stop. I don't want to make these any bigger than they are, because all I'm doing now is creating an area for even more water to pool, and that's not what I want inside the greenhouse. So from here on out, we're going to have to do it by hand. We're going to fill up our Crystal X tubs and just carry them over one at a time. like I said, for today, all we're worried about is getting the raised bed filled. So I think we'll be able to still get it done. It's just going to be a little bit slower process, but that's just the way it's going to have to be.
I just realized that this Crystal Lakes bucket is about halfway full of water. So I wanted to show you guys that this is how much rain and precipitation we have gotten in not a very long time. So this is why everything is so muddy and why things have been a little bit just too difficult for us to work in out here. We're bound and determined to get this project done and very soon, but this water is making things a lot more challenging.
Not the easiest way, but we're going to get it done.
One, two, three. So that was the last bucket load for the raised bed. We need to make sure that we have kept enough of the compost to fill up our bucket. So we're not going to add any more to the garden right now. And we're going to move on to some of the other things that we need to accomplish today so that we are ready to start putting plastic up over the next 2 days.
After we fill all the tubs, if we have any extra compost left, then we'll add that to the raised bed as well. But we don't want to add it now and then have to dig it back out to fill the tubs. So this is where it's going to be filled to. And down the road we may add more if this settles. But for now, this is awesome. So now that we have the raised bed filled, we need to put this end wall back on. We need to put the door in so that we have all the measurements correctly. And then we need to start adding in the wiggle wire track. Now I already did a little bit of that up here and on some of the sides. I'll show you guys that in a little bit. But first we need to get this end wall back in. Well, now that we have that end wall put back on, it's time to finish up putting on the track for the wiggle wire. Now, for those of you who don't know what wiggle wire is, it's basically a piece of wire that looks like this. And what this is it's the way that the plastic locks to the frame of the greenhouse. So when we put the plastic over the frame, they'll go on the outside of these tracks that we're installing. And then this piece of wiggle wire will go inside the track like this. and it will hold the plastic securely onto the greenhouse. And it actually does a really great job of holding it, and it holds it in such a way that it won't easily rip. Let's walk over to the old greenhouse and I'll show you what it looks like actually installed. Alright, so here we are by the old greenhouse, and you can see what I was talking about. The plastic, the film goes over the outside and over that track that we'll be installing. And then the wiggle wire is in there holding the plastic securely in place. And that holds it nice and secure so that it doesn't blow off in the wind. If some rain gets on it, nothing's going to pool. It holds it nice and tight. Now, speaking of that, earlier we mentioned that we've been waiting for 2 really nice warm days in order to install the plastic. And I know a lot of you had questions about why we would need to wait. If it's too cold outside, or if it's really cool outside, the plastic, will be more stiff. You won't be able to pull it tight when you put it on the greenhouse. You want a nice warm day so you can really pull that plastic tight when you put it on, because otherwise if you put it on in a cold day and then when it gets warm, it's going to actually kind of expand and become pretty loose on the greenhouse. So we want to put it on a warm day when we can really put it on nice, and it's just a lot easier to work with the plastic on a warm day. Now you also need to make sure it's not very windy the day that you're putting it on, which is also a challenge here in the Ozarks because we have a lot of wind. But this weekend looks like we're going to have the 2 perfect days to put it on, so we're excited about that.
So the track that we're going to put up needs to be anywhere that the plastic is going to attach to the greenhouse. So it needs to go over this front bow and the very back bow. It'll go down here on these footboards here and along all the hip boards on the outside along the greenhouse. Now we don't need it along the baseboards of the greenhouse at the bottom because we're going to have those roll-up sides and we won't need to attach it to that. So the bottom of the plastic will actually attach to the poles that roll up and roll down for ventilation. You ready for me to pull?
Yep.
Probably won't remember.
So we've got a couple more pieces of this track to put on this end wall, but I wanted to kind of explain to you how things will work once we start putting the plastic up. You can see that we've already run a piece of this track starting here at the hip board. We've bent it and it goes all the way over this hoop down and down to the other hip board. What I'm going to do right now is get ready to put a piece of the track that will attach right to this post. It'll go from the bottom of the hip board to the top of the baseboard. Like that. We're going to have to cut this, of course. And then when we put the end wall on, the end walls are a completely separate piece of plastic than what will go over the main part of the greenhouse. And we'll actually put the 2 ends on first. So the end will go, it'll be a solid piece of plastic that goes here, over, and then we'll put that wiggle wire in here to hold it on tight, and then it'll also attach down here. Now when we put the main piece of plastic on for the top, that will also attach to this same track. You'll actually have 2 pieces of wiggle wire in this track, and these can hold 2 pieces of wiggle wire just fine. So we're going to get ready to just cut these. Now remember that our poles aren't all the same length because of how we had to level the greenhouse to begin with. So we're going to have to go through and cut one of these for each of the 4 corners, and each one will be a different length. So we'll just do them one at a time. Alright, so now that we have these cut, we just use self-tapping screws, and I'm just going to attach each of these directly to these poles. And we'll just do this on all 4 corners.
So the work Kevin is doing right now, he doesn't really need my help with the track, so I'm going to start filling some of these buckets. These are big, they're called Crystallix buckets, and they're used for cattle. And some of our friends and neighbors who have cattle, they don't know what to do with them when they're done, so we asked them just to give them to us so that we can grow in them. About half of the buckets we have big cracks in the middle, which is fine. It's great for drainage, but we don't want a lot of the soil to pour out. So I'm going to be using some of the weed fabric, the woven weed fabric that we use like everywhere, and I'm going to put it down on the inside of this, and then I'm going to fill it with dirt. And this will keep the dirt in but still allow the water to leak out the bottom. Now the other half of the buckets we have, they don't have any holes, so we're gonna have to put holes in them. So we actually like that these have cracks in them. We don't have to do all the work to add drainage holes. So that's what I'm gonna be working on while he's still working on the track for the wiggle wire.
All right, so the last piece of this track that I need to put on is at the baseboards on the front and the back of the greenhouse. Now this will be attaching directly to this pressure treated wood that we have down here. So for these, you don't want to use the self-tapping screws. You actually want to use wood screws, and you want to make sure that you have screws that are approved for pressure treated wood. So I've already gone and pre-drilled holes in the track, and then I'm just going to be using these 1 1/4 inch deck screws that are approved for pressure treated wood. And I'm just going to go and I'm going to attach it here and on all the other parts of the baseboard along the front and the back of the greenhouse.
Well, I got 3 of them filled while Kevin was working. It's a decent start.
Heck yeah, every little bit helps. Well, the sun is starting to go down and it's starting to get chilly out, so that's where we're going to end today's video. We got all of that wiggle wire track on, and now if the forecast is what they say it's going to be, hopefully on Tuesday when you see a video from us, it will be us putting the plastic on this greenhouse and getting it all finished up. That'll be so exciting to have this project done.
I can't wait to start planting and start growing food. It's been a while and I'm getting spring fever, and I think this will help me out.
Right. We have some nice plants started in the house that are all ready to get out here, so we need to get this done.
So you guys, if you're enjoying our videos, make sure you subscribe and don't forget to share with your friends. And until next time, thanks so much for stopping by the homestead. Take care and God bless.
God bless.